Hi guys, and back again. So in the last episode, we talked about Blockly. We talked about the log files or the debug mode. We talked about sending commands and creating a loop. And today we dive into the functionality of Blockly a little bit further. I got Stefan with me again, and yeah, we will jump right into it right now.
Okay, let's continue where we actually left off last time and build on what we did here. So what I already mentioned last time, maybe you remember, is that we want to use, or sometimes we want to use the same blocks at several parts within the code and don't want to duplicate those. So what I do is I'll take this out. So I want to reuse this blinking effect. And therefore we have functions. So I can use a function as a reusable block. I take this functional and how do we want to call it? Blink. Blink the lights. And I'll add that here. So now we have a reusable block, and if you go to function, now you have this block. So I named it blink the lights. Now that automatically creates a new block, which is called blink the lights. And here we go. So it's that easy. And if we want to do that several times, I just copy paste that. And so that's much nicer, much concise.
Much cleaner,
yeah. One thing I was actually asked just lately, if you have a lot of these blocks and the rules become pretty big, whether you could actually kind of collapse that to make it more easier and as an overview. And that's actually possible if you go to collapse block. So all of a sudden this is collapsed and it's much smaller. And of course, you can also expand the block. So that's really helpful if you have huge rules that span more like the whole screen, just as a side note. So we have this function, and that function is called via the blink lights. Now, what is a little bit bad or unusable is that the number of times of the blinking is hard-coded, what we use as developers. Let's say we want to have it blinking 1 second, but we want to make this more flexible, and so we can give it a parameter, and we call we name that parameter. So we name that blink times, or blink number, and then I can use this blink number all of a sudden. So I can use that differently. So all of a sudden it's called blink lights with blink number, and I can add the number of blinks here. So in this case, I want to have it blinking twice, and in this case, I want to have it blinking 4 times.
And it doesn't matter when you put in. So this number doesn't matter anymore. The repeat 4 times doesn't matter anymore?
Sure. This is actually what I have to change now, of course, right? So it actually provides a variable that is called blink number. And so you find that under variables all of a sudden, this parameter. And then I use this parameter instead of having this hard-coded, and I now use that variable. So this number is provided to the function as in the variable blink number, and then I can use that blink number here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So we can use that. So first of all, it should blink twice. Then it should play this. Let's take the meow out. So let's just say, please come to lunch. And then it should blink 4 times again. So I'll save that. Let's switch back to the other camera, so everyone can see that. So I press the button. So it should start blinking. 1, 2.
Please come to lunch.
And now it does the other blinks. Okay?
Yeah.
You may have noticed is while it was saying, please come to lunch, it already started blinking. That's because Please Come to Lunch is basically done in parallel while the next block already runs. That's why it doesn't wait until Please Come to Lunch is actually spoken. So that's the reason why.
And I think the say command or the say something takes a little bit longer than a normal command with like blinking lights and stuff like that.
True, exactly. What is also pretty nice is let's say we don't want to say something, but instead we want to stream some music, and which gives us another thing that's interesting to understand. So, for example, we take multimedia, and we use Play Stream. As I said before, in the last session, it's pretty easy to use. We have we add the URL here. This is actually a radio that we have in Germany. But the problem is what we would do here, we would start the stream and it would never end. So how do we get this ended? And my idea would be what we should do is when we press 1, we actually start it. And if we press twice, it should be stopped. Okay. So how do we do this? If you remember, we had these developers too. So, okay, no, we don't want to leave. Let's first save it. We go to the developers tool. We use the developer toolbar, and we again pin our objects. And let's see what it means to our green push button if we press it once or press it twice. So this is pretty handy. We have it here. So pressing it twice reveals the 1.3, pressing it 1 reveals the 1.0. Okay, so we use 1.0 for pressing 1, 1.3 for pressing twice. Going back to the rules. So we used rules. Okay. So we go to this rule. And the idea is if I press 1, then we start it. If I press 2, we stop it. So we need an if else. So we use this if else. Let's take that first away. And a condition. So we have to add the condition. And what I want to do is I use the button. So we need to have the state of the button. So I'll quickly copy and paste it. So we do. So we have it here. So if the state of the button equals, and I use that in stop. Here we go. So we see 1.0. Then we want to do this whole stuff. Okay. But if we press the button 1.3, and there is this settings icon where I can actually extend my block, have an else if, and I'm pretty lazy, so I copy that again and say 1.3. So if we have 1.0, we do it that way. And if we have the 1.3, we want to cancel the stream.
Stop it. But you gotta change the audio sync to Jonas Chromecast, right?
Correct. Thank you. So Jonas Chromecast. So now we go to the voice multimedia, and there's a stop stream. And here we go. And that's all. So what we added is an if else. The else section is done through the settings. We put all the block that we had before into the first part of the 1.0. And now with the else section where we have 1.3, we stop the stream. Let's see how that works. I'll switch back to the camera. So HTTP program. For the sake of starting earlier with, I'll disable that so it starts streaming right away. Now I'll press the button. So I press the button once and it should start streaming right away. But it's of course annoying because this guy is actually talking while we're working here. So I'll press the button now 2 times. So you see 1.1.3 here, and now it's off.
Yeah. So a stream takes probably a little while to stream it. So yeah. So again, that's a hint. Whenever you use streaming, think ahead that you need something to actually do the switch off the streaming. To stop it, yeah.
Now, what I usually do is I don't want to think about stopping it manually, but rather like if you have a light in a staircase, you switch on the light and you want the light to go out automatically after, for example, 5 minutes. Here we want to have the same thing. We want to switch off the stream, let's say after 5 minutes. So only stream it for 5 minutes and automatically go off. How do we do this? Well, a naive way would be to wait here. So we add the stream and then wait for like 5 minutes, but that's really a bad approach because that would mean we're waiting in that rule for that long of a time, and you should not do that. Rules should be quickly end. Instead, we use something else that we haven't looked at, which is actually timers. Mm-hmm. So let's use the timer. So we were here in the timer section. Timers can become really complex. So we won't look at this particular timer where you have even more options. We use this. This is actually one of the simplest timers. So you go here, add it. What will it do? So we go through all of this. We start playing the stream, and then after 5 minutes, we want to stop the stream. So I copy that and add it here. What it does is actually does not wait. That's important to understand. It does not wait here. So it actually triggers a timer in the background and leaves the rule right away. And then it sits there for 5 minutes. And when the 5 minutes have been reached, then it switches us off. So that's because we don't want to wait 5 minutes here. Let's do that for, let's say, 10 seconds.
So basically the rule is triggered or is running for like, I don't know, like 5 seconds. And then the timer is running in the background and then it stops it on its own.
Yeah. Right. So I reduce the number of blinks to 1. And you should, it's a good habit to give the timer a name. The reason is there are possibilities to do something with the timer later on in more complex rules. So let's give it a nice timer. So for example, the stream off timer, it doesn't have to have the name timer in it, but it's again a good habit. So we call it stream off timer. And then the timer is created, which then calls everything that's in between. So you can even add 10 blocks in it. So they could be as complex as it is. Could even call function and a lot. So,
but still, you can turn off the stream with the 2 times push button.
Exactly. So it could be here. So if it was 5 minutes, it would go all out automatically. But we still have the else section that allows you to turn off the button manually.
Yeah. So if somebody calls, you wanna just cancel it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, let's push the button. Oh, let's see when the stream. Can you hear it?
Yeah. It's quiet, but
okay.
Still noticeable.
And now it's gone. It's off.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I have to make the Google
bump it up a little bit, but this would be a good example for showering. So if you go into the shower, turn on the lights, then the stream goes on, and normally like after 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, you leave the shower again and go out of the,
Yeah. And you could imagine a lot of things, like you could every other 5 minutes you change the stream or so. So there's probably a lot of ideas that you could do. So timers, where would people recommend to go for blockades is timers. Timers in DSL or writing them is really daunting. So if you look what we have created by now, so here, this is the timers thing. It's actually pretty complex. You wouldn't want to really look at that in particular if you could even add a timer after a timer. So after 10 seconds, switch off the streaming, but then after another 10 seconds, do something else. So they can be become really complex, but with Blockly, it's really nice. And whenever I use timers, I never go to a different way of doing it.
Yeah, especially for newcomers, it's pretty easy to use because basically it says what it does, kind of. So
yeah. And we put a lot of thoughts when we are developing these blocks to make them readable. So after 10 seconds, do with the timer and stop the stream on this audio thing, or else if the state of the item equals that, so you can easily read it.
Yeah.
We kind of actually redesigned blocks back after some time when we noticed it's not readable. So it's so we try to keep these as readable as possible. Okay, I think this is mainly for if-else loops, streaming, timers. So that's probably already quite a number of different things. So my idea would be to actually switch gears a little bit and go a little bit more into, let's say, the if and else part together with dates. So because date handling is pretty new to Blockly. There was a library, but it has gone into core. And also we have what we call persistence and notifications. And so we probably should switch gears and start with a new rule. How's that?
Yeah, I think so too, yeah.
Okay, Michi, regarding timers, I wanted to show you a different example, which is probably more reality like. Usually, if you have a home, you want to actually detect if someone is actually breaking in your house, and you might have sensors here. And in case that is happening, we want to call the police. Mm-hmm. But if you know it's a false alarm, you don't want to call the police right away, but rather only in half a minute or a minute. But if it's a false alarm, then you want to be able to stop it. Yeah. So how do we do this? And you'll see, you can write this rule basically in 2 or 3 minutes. So let's go ahead and do that. So we create a new rule. So let's call it new rule. So burglar alarm and burglar alarm, and so it's actually checked if in this with this burglar alarm trigger. So in case and we have one, so there's a sensor that detects someone is breaking in the house, which is called burglar alarm. So in case it receives the commands, we then create the rule. So of course, all the rules we're writing here are kind of simplified, but you probably get the point what we want to do. So the logic is we take an if, we take the comparison, and we take the state. No, that was the wrong one. So we take the state of the item and say if the burglar alarm, we'll do that right away, it equals on, then we do something. So we take the burglar alarm in that case, so it's here. If the burglar alarm is on, then something should happen. Some people who are more advanced would say, why do we have to pick the burglar alarm state? Because the rule was already triggered with the burglar alarm. And there's actually a handy thing that you can use is you can actually take this one. Hopefully I put the one. So I can actually take the new state of the item. So the contextual info takes the state of the item that triggered the rule. So instead of using that, I can use this one here. And the new state of the item is the one that called the rule.
That's very good. Yeah, I didn't know that, but
it's clear. So why would I use it? First of all, it's kind of more generic, and the reason why I use it, let's imagine in the future, it's not the burglar alarm item anymore, but some other alarm that triggers it. In the triggering part of the rule, it automatically takes that item, and I don't have to update the rule itself. So it's more generic.
Maybe you only have to check the item state. So for example, a contact sensor wouldn't work with on probably. But...
Yeah. So in case burglar alarm is on, we actually give it a warn. So that's only in the log file. So burglar alarm detected, calling police in 30 seconds. Okay, we don't want to call the police right away, but we want to do that in 30 seconds. So how do we do something in the future? Remember what block type we use that for? So timers, of course, right? So we go to timers. So let's use a timer which says after 30 seconds, call police timer. And there we would also call the police. So for simplicity, we're not really calling the police here, but we call the police here. So at that part here, we would have to implement something that calls the police. Instead, what we can do is we use, for example, to shy away the burglars. What we can do instead is we use voice and or maybe a dog would be better. I think we have a barking. I think it's called barking. Barking. Yeah.
You know, some people are scared of cats too. So.
True. So let's use our Google Mini here for the time being, but of course we could use any loudspeaker outside of the house. So after 30 seconds, it would start barking. Let's now imagine you noticed that for some reason it was false alarm. So you want to press a button so police is not called, otherwise it's going to be really expensive. So in that case, and it's kind of getting a little bit tricky now in terms of how do you trigger this? And we actually have to remove that for in a second, but you'll see why. So what we do is we add another if. So in case the green button is actually clicked, so we use the green button again. So where do we have it? Items and things. Get state of the item, and let's say the where is it? And we want to double click here. So in case we double click on the green button, and here's the thing that I wanted to show with the green button, we actually want to cancel the timer. So if we didn't do that, it would call the police. So how do we do this? There's a particular function which is called cancel timer, and here it comes in really handy that we actually give it a name, so it knows which timer it should cancel. Okay, so instead I push the button 3 times, cancel the timer, and because we're nice, we add something to the log file. Burglar alarm, let's say false detection, action, cancel. Okay. I'm not sure. I didn't look at the watch, but it probably wasn't like more than 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and it's just right away. So the only problem that we now have is the rule would never be triggered because of the green button. It would only be triggered, remember, because of the burglar alarm. So what we have to do is, so I want to change that. Okay, so let's use the rule. So the burglar alarm again, because we need to change the trigger. So either the burglar alarm received a command or the green button received a command. So we need to have 2 triggers here. So that's the tricky part of that. So we use the green buttons. So either burglar received the command or green push button, then you do that. And the reason why I showed that is many people like to use that, and it's pretty handy, as I said. The problem is if the green button was pressed, then we would get the new state of the item of the green button, which is then wrong. So depending on what was pressed here, unfortunately, we cannot use that anymore. Get the problem?
Yeah.
So even though this is pretty handy for single triggering information, if you have different triggers, this generic thing unfortunately doesn't work. So instead, we really have to use the state of the item and put the burglar alarm here, so we're really specific. Even though I told you before, it's a pretty nice thing, in some cases it doesn't work. And that's why I wanted to show you this, that in one hand, in some situations, in many situations it works well, but in that case it doesn't. So if this burglar alarm is on, we call the police after 30 seconds. If the green button was pressed 2 times, we would actually cancel the timer. Okay? Questions? Does that make sense?
Not really. I think you just need to disable the other rule, not to trigger the stream.
Yeah, that's true. So we wrote the other rule that also uses the green button, and so in this case it would trigger both rules, and that's what you probably don't want to do. By the way, how can we do this? This is also something that we haven't shown that. So let's say we want to disable the other rule, which is possible. So that's the other old rule that we wrote several sessions before. You can always go here and actually can really disable rules. Sometimes I do that. If, for example, if something shouldn't happen during holidays, or if there's a conflict between the rules, you can actually disable the rules here. Okay. I think we don't necessarily have to run this burglar rule. I just wanted to demo that, how you do that. And I think we should now switch gears completely into a different topic, which would be more on notifications, and which are pretty nice, and also some other things that I wanted to show. Okay.
Yeah.